Hi, this is Janice Fly Mama 777. I'm back, and when I left off last, I had picked back up again on uh, how to become a flight attendant, basically. So what I want to cover in this video is I'm just going to share a little bit about before I share about training. I do want to say, because I know some of the questions that people want to know is how much does a flight attendant make? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Flight attendants do not make a lot of money starting out. Um, it depends on when you fly. For instance, you will, we have what we call crew scheduling. Crew scheduling is who sets up our basically our schedule as far as what days we're going to fly, how long we're going to fly, when we're going to fly, and where we're going to fly. My first trip, which I started out on a Sunday, and then it ended on a Wednesday. So I was actually on a 4-day trip, and within those 4 days, I had a total of 12 legs. So, for instance, my first day I flew 4 trips. The next day I flew, I think it was 3 trips. The third day I flew maybe another 4 or 5 trips, and then I did, I think, a couple of trips my last day. Being that I am a reserve on reserve, and what being on reserve is that you are you do not hold a line. In other words, when you're on reserve, you do not have a set schedule as far as you don't know until crew scheduling actually sets your schedule, and you look and you find out where you're going, or they call you. And when they call you, it's normally for us, we have what we call 2 hours. It's a 2 hour window that crew scheduling, they call us, and then we have to report in, and we have to check in at the airport. Normally when you check in, and you'll learn all of this, they'll explain all of this to you when you get into the actual training. When you check in, you need to check in if you're, say, I'm flying from my home base, and my home base is, say, Dulles, in Washington, D.C. I have to report in no later than 1 hour before the flight is actually scheduled to depart, 60 minutes before. If, say, away, say instead I fly from Dallas and I go to, say, Montreal, or Toronto, Canada. Being that it's international, I believe, I have to look because I haven't really flown international yet, but I do. My company does fly international. I just haven't flown international yet. But when you're away from your domicile, which is what we call our home base, our domicile, you have to report no later than 45 minutes. Now, when crew scheduling calls us, we still, when they call us, they should give us at least 2 hours to actually report to the airport. But even after you report and to the airport, you still may be waiting for like an hour, or if it's something that comes up, maybe it's bad weather or something happens with the plane, you could be sitting at the airport for 2 or 3 hours before you actually go anywhere. When you're sitting as a reserve flight attendant, or really any flight attendant, if you're sitting, well, no, let me just concentrate on reserve. When you're sitting as a reserve flight attendant, until you actually get in the plane, the customers are on the plane, and you close the door, the main cabin door. Once that cabin door closes, that's when you start to get paid. So you will get paid from, say, on my 4 day that I explained that I went on a 4 day 12 leg trip. Once I left my main, my domicile base, I started getting paid the moment that the door closed. Until I finish, once I finish that 4th day, I call crew scheduling to ask them, can I be released? Once they release me, that's when my pay stops for that particular trip. So we are given a certain number of hours. It depends on what airline that you work with, that you get what you consider, what you're called a base salary or whatever, that you get a set number of hours per month that you work. However, beyond that set number, we have other offset costs. For instance, for food, and it's not that much as far as what you get paid, but then it does build up throughout the year, because it could be, it can turn out to be a pretty chunk of money based on how many hours you fly and how long you're gone. So I just want to touch that if you're looking to make money, to get rich as a flight attendant, you're not going to get rich as a flight attendant. It's not the right job for you. Most of the airlines, I believe, I'm not sure if they have their pay scale on their particular website, but when you go to the interview, they will let you know what the salary, the beginning salary is. Now, as a new flight attendant, you do have what we call a probation period. For my company, it's 6 months. So, in other words, with a lot of jobs, even if you have federal government jobs, most of them you have a year probation that you're on. So basically, if you do your job and you're on time and you're where you're supposed to be, you won't have to worry about anything. It's when you're not where you're supposed to be or on time, that's when you're going to run into some issues. So that's why time management is a very good skill to have as well. So getting back to, I think I wanted to talk about training. My training, again, like I said, it was 3 weeks long. I actually did 3 weeks in classroom training, and it was very, very intense. And I will have to tell you that they purposely make it intense because of the very nature of what we do. Depending on what situation we may find ourselves in, it can be intense, and they want to see how you can handle being without sleep for a length of time, or being up for a length of time. With my training, we would have to be in class, like say at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it may be 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, or 7 at night before we got out of training. And then after training, we had to come home to do probably 2 or 3 hours worth of homework, and then you had to study because we had tests, like quizzes or tests, like every other day. And by the second week, I think we were having a test or a quiz just about every day. So and they required that we made a 90% or above on our test or quiz. And then we lost in my particular class because I lived in the area, or I lived less than 50 miles from the training facility. Where I am, if you live 50 miles less or less from the training facility, or less than 50 miles from the training facilities, then you have to drive in and you have to come home every day. For some people, they like that, but I have to really be honest. I really would have preferred to be able to stay at the airport, and I think the people that we lost in my class, had we been afforded that opportunity, because some of them live further than I did. And so when you have to, be up for almost 12, 13 hours a day, or actually it's longer than that because it's 10 to 12 hours class day, and then you come home and you have to stay up for another 3 to 5 hours doing homework and studying. You're not getting a lot of sleep. And so, if you're not the kind of person that can do that, then it's not good. And also, the thing is that you have to be careful when you're flying, because I drank a lot of energy drinks, Monster, while I was in class. But you have to be careful with drinking those types of supplements or taking anything when you're flying, because when you're flying, it just gets to you a little bit more. So that's why it's important that you have a healthy lifestyle, or try to have a healthy lifestyle if you're going to fly. Again, our training, it was really, really intense. We did a lot. We did a lot of drills, like the emergency drills, because they want to make sure that you get this down pat, because of the fact you have, passengers that you're going to be responsible for, to make sure that they get out safely as well as yourself. And they want to make sure that you know how to follow instructions, because it's going to be very, very important that you're a person that you can assert yourself, make sure that people will feel confident or comfortable around you. So if there is an issue or situation, they feel comfortable that they can look to you to handle it. So now getting past the training, somewhere during the training, when you first begin your training, they allow you to select or put down what your choices is for your domicile, home base. Now, this is where it's going to be very, very important that you understand, as a flight attendant, that you may not get, say if you live in Atlanta and your airline flies out of Atlanta, you may ask for Atlanta. You want Atlanta to be your domicile, but Atlanta is a senior base, and what they call a senior base, that means that they have flight attendants who have been on board with the company for a number of years, normally over 10 or more years. Anybody that's been to class and graduated before you, they will be senior to you. So that means that they have more seniority than you. So if most people want to say in Atlanta, then you're going to have to go where the company needs you to be. And so when I came through the selection for my company, we had Dallas, we had Detroit, we had Atlanta, and we had Dallas and DC. And so, of course, with my family, being in Atlanta, I wanted Atlanta. But guess what? I didn't get Atlanta. And this is where it can be challenging, because, again, there's some training. When you go through training, there's some companies that will pay you. My company, they did not pay us during training. So if you are the solo provider, say you're single or you're not married, but you might have family, and that means in order for you to go training 12 hours or more a day, you can't work anyplace else. So that means the income that you were making, you no longer make that income. So you're going to have to make sure that you have enough savings set aside, not only for you to take care of your bills and so forth while you're in training, but so that you'll have something to live, because you got to eat. In training, if you don't live in the area, they will put you up in a hotel, and they will pay for the hotel. But other than the hotel may be offering breakfast for you to eat, and sometimes it's not a full breakfast, it may be just like a continental breakfast, then you'll be responsible for your own food. So those are things that you need to think about. So by me being married and having a family and not being able to be based when I first finished training at Atlanta, I ended up having to move to Dallas. That meant that I had to find a place to live. That meant that basically even though we were going to be having a second income, we didn't have a second income when I started. It was just my husband's income. We were going to be paying for two places